And welcome back to Jeff Koinange Live here at Citizen Television, talking law and society. Oh, someone once said the law is an ass. I wonder what they meant by that, Eric Theuri, president of the LSA. What do they mean by that?
No, it's a long story, but the long and short of it is that the ass, I mean, in terms of the donkey,
yes,
is a very useful animal. But, of course, it also kicks you. So you can't discard it just because it has kicked you, because you know you need it to carry the heavy load for you. Yeah, so it has both of its sides.
Good and bad.
Good and bad.
I get it.
Yes.
Okay, before the break, Eric, we were talking about Wafula, who stole a chicken, who was sentenced to 20 years and is rotting in jail. Yet our politicians are getting their cases dropped left, right, and center. I mean, come on. Where's the justice?
Jeff, if you look at, for example, the report that the DPP prepares, you will see that they do drop quite a number of cases. But for me, the question is extremely important in this respect, that if you look at the numbers of people who have been convicted in our prisons, more than half of those people are serving a jail term that is less than 3 years. So in essence, those are petty offenders. Chances are that they didn't have an advocate. And an advocate in that system is a quality check mechanism, because what an advocate does is to test the evidence that is being presented by the prosecution to ensure that it discloses nothing else than the guilt of the person who is before the court. So what does that tell you of our justice system? That we have probably a lot of people in jail who ought not to be in jail. And the net effect of this is that, and a majority of them are usually the younger people, is that you now end up wasting your productive years in jail when you ought not to have been there. And you come back having come from a criminal academy, and you become an even more notorious criminal as a result of the orientation that you have undergone in the prison. And that, for me, is the tragedy that we are witnessing with the numbers before the court, and what is now coming out, that in terms of our investigations, most of them, or some of them, or a significant portion of it, is driven by malice or other ulterior considerations other than the purpose for which law and criminal law has been enacted, which is to prevent crime and eventually, for those that have been caught, for rehabilitation.
Yeah. So for the LSK, on your part, what do you do about that? Or for these people who have been jailed unlawfully, if you will, for lack of a better word?
We have had these discussions whenever we have, the criminal bar benches, whenever we sit at, because I sit at NCAJ, we've had these discussions, and we've been telling the judiciary there is a need first to reduce the numbers that are in prison currently by using alternative sentencing methods. Of course, we also intend to work with like-minded partners so that we can enhance not just the capacity of our advocates to plead for non-custodial and alternative sentencing methods, but also to raise the capacity of the judiciary to move in that direction. There is also a challenge because with the judiciary, it's sometimes a question of how many cases do you clear, because you have a backlog. Yeah. And one of the assessment is how many cases do you clear. So you almost become, like a machine that you want to clear as many cases as possible, and where you find that someone is guilty, you want to convict, send them to jail for 1 month, 2 months. But if you are convicting someone who probably was working a day job, he doesn't have, something to do, he looks at it and says, I can go and eat government food for 3 or 4 months for free. But if you perhaps sentence them to go and clean the chief's toilet or something, that might act more of a deterrence. So we need to have this conversation, and it's a conversation that is ongoing, but we're trying to see if we can get on board more partners to support us so that we are able to carry out more sensitization, talk to the community, try and get in more pro bono advocates to deal at that level in terms of some of these petty cases, so that then, one, we can be able to also act as a check against police misuse of their powers, but also, secondly, ensure that those who go into the system are actually people who deserve to get into the system, as opposed to. So we have quite a bit of work in terms of what we need to do. We will also, of course, be pushing the government, because it's the government which has this responsibility to ensure that it puts in more money into the National Legal Aid scheme and activate it so that we can begin to actually have this country on the path of the rule of law and the constitutionalism. Yeah.
You were telling me earlier on, Eric, that there are, 23,000 lawyers in Kenya, plus minus?
Yes.
What kind of quality of lawyer are we producing today? What do you see? What's the quality of the lawyer that's coming out of the institutions today?
We have fairly good lawyers coming out. I think if you were to rank Kenyan lawyers in the international space and in Africa generally in terms of their training, the quality of work that they do, you'll find that the Kenyan lawyers really rank highly. But that said and done, we also have challenges. And because of also the high numbers, we get about 2,000 advocates getting admitted perhaps every year. So we have a challenge with regards to question of quality. We have a challenge with regards to the question of mentorship. And you must appreciate that, and this is an old adage saying within our profession, that the younger lawyer has the advantage of newer knowledge. The older lawyer has the advantage of experience. Now, the place of experience vis-a-vis newer knowledge in terms of now mentorship and guiding the ones who are coming in so that their knowledge is then infused with their experience is where we are having a bit of a challenge. But again, you look at it, it is the question of the numbers. Because our older members, and when we say old, I would want to use 10 years in practice as a benchmark, are increasingly becoming less. The younger ones of 10 and below are increasingly becoming more because of the number of lawyers we keep admitting. So in terms of being able to create structures for mentorship and for the passage of this experience, because you see, sometimes you don't have to reinvent the wheel. If I tried something in my younger years and it didn't work, I should be able to pass on that experience to those who are coming after me. But when there are too many and there are no channels for that, that's a problem. And it's also one of the things which, as a law society, we are also looking at in terms of how then do we ensure that we create adequate structures for the passage of that knowledge and to just try and raise the standards of the lawyers who are coming into the market.
Yeah. I was thinking of just a moment ago, we have a by-election coming up in Bungoma. IEBC, half of the commissioners have resigned, or not half, but some of them have resigned, several of them. How are we going to hold a credible election with IEBC in a state that it is? Is there a constitutional crisis looming?
we have a problem. And, you know, when you see IEBC going through the kind of crisis that it is going through, it you know, in a way saddens you. I was particularly, on my part, extremely disappointed with the process that was undertaken in Parliament, extremely disappointed. I thought that they had an opportunity to benchmark and set a standard of inquiry into the allegations of misconduct by the commissioners that would meet some of the best standards internationally. But they rushed it. They appear to have had an outcome in mind, and you know, they took the process to get to that outcome, which is extremely sad, considering that the people of Kenya, when setting up these independent commissions, wanted them to enjoy that independence so that they can be a check, an additional check on people's sovereignty. So Parliament should have, you know, taken more time to interrogate those issues, to handle them in a manner that then sets a benchmark for any future any future allegations that may lead to the removal of commissioners. Now, that is compounded by the manner in which the members of the tribunal were appointed. Of course, it is a prerogative of the president to appoint. But what did we see? That the president appoints them in the morning, and in the afternoon, they are being sworn in. And that's where we have a problem. Because in the overall scheme of things, what does it tell you? That the president will appoint people, gazette them in the morning, and the Chief Justice will be available to swear them in the afternoon. It is okay to have that level of high efficiency in the management of government affairs. But in terms of perception, does it give you a feeling that the judiciary is independent? In terms of perception, they might actually have been independent. And they arrived at that and they were told, you know what, there are these people, they have been appointed. Are you available? And the Chief Justice says, yes, if they're available, I can swear them in the afternoon. It is probable that that is what could have happened. But in terms of perception, can we say that that is a process which other people are and looking at it would say that this was possible? And remember, these commissioners, those who have been appointed, we are working on the presumption that they also had other things they were doing. So they woke up in the morning and they found there was a gazette notice, or probably they were consulted, are you available for this appointment? And they said yes. So they may have known about it. But you want to imagine that if I'm appointed in the morning, the gazette notice comes out showing I've been appointed in the morning, that for the rest of the day, there were a few things I was doing. I was probably celebrating news of my appointment. So how do I become immediately available for swearing? So when you look at that, it gives you an extremely, cold sweat, because you begin to ask yourself certain questions. And I think as Kenyans, we need to ask these questions. Is this super efficiency in government, executive, and judiciary a good thing for us? And I'm not casting any aspersions on the men and women who've been appointed to that tribunal, because I know them. I think they are honorable people. But when the process of their appointment is done in a manner that casts doubt, then you are not even being fair to them in terms of their qualifications and the experience and the stature that they hold in society, because they have really worked hard to be outstanding gentlemen and lady of the law.
Absolutely. Must be very worrying for you at the LSK, Mr. President. Must be very worrying. Let's take a look at Magic Wall. Lots of reactions, lots of tweets coming in very thick and very fast this evening. Galgalo Bule says, what is the motive behind the withdrawal of the big graft cases against big names by the DPP since UDA government came into power? If it is due to lack of evidence, DPP must explain how the decision to charge was arrived at in the first place. Agree? I agree.
Entirely, I agree.
Jimmy says, Mr. Theuri, you are saying that DPP showed some documents whereby he had directed DCI to cover some points, but failed to do so. That is one side of the story. Did you listen to the other side, the DCI, in order to update with the truth?
Very interesting question. But, I mean, at the end of the day, there are certain things where you are able to evaluate. There are certain things where you are able to evaluate. When you've been asked once, twice, thrice to give feedback, and that feedback is not coming,
no.
Then there is a presumption that, you know, there's really nothing.
Yeah. Clearly, there was a lot of friction between the former DCI and the DPP. I mean, there was major friction.
Yeah, I mean, this is the only country where you have the house of the DPP being invaded by, you know, thugs who apparently came in and didn't steal, you know, anything of value. It's something that should worry someone, especially when you look at the things that happened to, for example, some of the IEBC officials. You see a pattern.
Yeah, be afraid. Be very afraid. Kipto Ruto says, it is not good to only question the reasons why cases are being dropped. It is also essential to check on the genesis of these cases. Are both sides genuine? If not, will the judiciary also take the blame? We all know that all arms of government depend on each other. And that's why we're saying there's a weak spot somewhere. There's a weak link somewhere.
And you know, the strength of the chain of justice is as weak as its weakest link. Mm-hmm. And that's why we really have a problem within that sector.
Yeah. Good point. Mr. T. Manyara says, should we come to an amicable conclusion that laws are made to guide the wise, but strictly to be followed by the fools? Criminal injustices should be dealt with accordingly. This will help curb the rising crimes that are being witnessed in our country daily. Remember, the generation is watching. Let's do the right thing. Agree, yeah?
Yeah. A lot of wisdom there.
Yeah, a lot of wisdom there, absolutely. Okelo Mwalimu says ongoing selective acquittal of graft suspects is likely to starve lawyers who used to make a killing from such cases. Due to this, we're likely to witness vehement opposition from the learned friends. Lastly, I'm still hopeful that petty offenders will soon be set free. You were saying that yourself. A lot of people are serving petty crimes and petty offenses, and they should be out.
Indeed.
Nyantika Chester says, we've made immense strides as a country over the years, and it will be very sad to have bodies like the Royal Society of Kenya sit pretty and watch as the Constitution, quote-unquote, democracy and the rule of law is mutilated. History will judge them harshly. Oof. Someone's coming after you there.
Oh, yeah. We are not afraid of the judgment that history is going to give us. We are going to be robust in the defense of the Constitution. That we are completely determined that even if, and this is something that sometimes even our members accuse us of, being anti-government. We are not anti-government. We are only standing for the rule of law. And where there is a violation of the law, we will address it. in whichever way, because sometimes some of those things require that they be dealt with by way of law reform. If that is the route, then we will take that route. But if the route is to go to court, then we will take that route. But we will ensure that at least when we discharge our mandate as been given to us by Section 4 of the LSK Act. Yeah.
Okay. On the GEM MC1, okay, he says, please ask the president if at all the Hustler Fund is constitutional. Tell Kenyans the truth.
The Hustler Fund is one which really requires a lot of discussion around it. You get the sense that quite a few corners have been cut to ensure that we get to the rollout of the funds.
Yeah.
In terms of legality, there are quite a number of questions that we are looking at. Compliance with PFM Act, compliance with the requirements for public participation, and all that. So it is going to be something that is going to occupy our minds for quite a while, and we have a few team of experts who are looking into the entire scheme to just advise us on whether it has complied with the law or not.
And if it hasn't, you will say something. I mean, you will respond at some point.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Honorable Murimi says, Eric Theuri is the president of the LSK, has been yearning for. We believe in his leadership as he steers way up. I hope he reforms the LSK. It's one of the strong institutions this country has left. Oh, there's a more, okay. Jimmy Wambulua says, to what extent does the president think these cases were all politically motivated and thus lack enough evidence? We're talking about the cases that have been dropped lately. What do you think? To what extent were they politically motivated?
No, I think it would be a bit overstretching to make that kind of a response. You look at each case on a case-by-case basis. I think that would be the way to go, and that is what we have done, and we'll continue to do to ensure that public interest is protected, even as all these things are done. And remember, it's not just the Law Society. Before these cases are withdrawn, the DPP also is required to give the court reasons, and there have been courts which have declined to accept the reasons that have been given. So we've also been calling on the judiciary to, put its foot down and demand that cogent reasons should be given before any of those cases are withdrawn. Of course, where parties come and tell the court that they have agreed to withdraw, like, the case of the CS for agriculture, Theuri, because it was a case of the victim saying, we have agreed. So, in those kind of situations, it's very difficult because you can't proceed with a case against those. But there are others, for example, even where the parties have consented, that the public interest would demand that the DPP should not accept the request of the parties to withdraw. And we've had that conversation with the DPP, and we've said, it's not like in all cases where parties come and say we have agreed to withdraw, that should be encouraged. It should be discouraged in cases where public interest, because of the nature of the offense, requires that that case be prosecuted to its logical conclusion. Yeah.
Finally, you've served 7 months right now. Time flies, we were talking about earlier on. You've got a 2-year tenure, right? What do you want to accomplish by the end of that 2 years?
We've, this year we've achieved what we wanted to achieve, which is, one, to restore sanity at the Secretariat. We are working on rebuilding a relationship with partners that we had severed, donor partners and other civil society actors who are very instrumental in offering support, technical and financial, to some of the activities that we intend to undertake. We have initiated a process of review of our own enabling laws and regulations. Some of them are regulations that were enacted in the 60s, in the 90s, and there is a need to review them, to bring them to reality in terms of the advancements that have been made by other law societies across the world. So that is ongoing. We've been able to use technology to integrate our system with the judiciary system. And so beginning next year, and this process has already begun, we generate about 14,000 practicing certificates, and they are printed on hard paper. And that paper goes, the certificate goes to the CRJ to sign. So you can imagine any year she signs about 14,000 practicing certificates. And those are necessary for an advocate to, apply for tenders and whatever. So we have used technology, we've revolutionized that process, and now it's digital from end to end. They apply digitally, it will be signed digitally, and they'll be able to access it digitally from next year. So at least that one is done. So our next big project is to look at how we can optimize the properties that we do have. The Law Society has a property in South Sea, has a property in Gitanga Road. So we want to see how we can optimize that, and I'm hoping that before the end of this year, before the end of next year, we would have come up with concretized plans in terms of how we are able to optimize those properties. Because going into the future, we want to be able to host our own trainings. We want to be able to host our own secretariat and to host a few of the services that go around legal profession. We are working with the Nairobi Center for Arbitration to try and make Nairobi to be the center for dispute resolution. So that basically means that we hope to be able to attract international commercial arbitration into this country, and we have very good experts in this country on that, and we are building capacity towards that. So if we optimize, then some of that work can actually be undertaken at the premises which we would have set up. And eventually, once we diversify the revenue streams for the Law Society, then we can even be able to give more subsidies, especially to the young, to the vulnerable. And Jeff, you must also appreciate one thing. The legal profession is an extremely demanding profession. Yeah. Because of that, then we are vulnerable to depression. We are vulnerable to alcoholism because of the demands that we have on the society. And to take care of those, it's extremely expensive, and we cannot be able to do with the current revenue streams that we have. But if we are able then to expand our income, then we can be able to offer more support to the vulnerable members of the society, to those that fall prey to the demands and the demands of the society. So that is the vision that my council and I are pushing forward, and we have achieved quite a bit. I think going forward, God willing, we should be able to achieve the optimization of our properties, and I think then we would have done our duty to the society, and also have begun the journey of steering the Law Society into greater heights. And I think one other thing which we want to, and which we've not been doing very well, is when it comes to legislation that are coming out of Parliament. So we have recruited someone because we didn't have that person in the office for parliamentary affairs. We want to recruit an additional person to do that, so that no bill or regulation will come out of Parliament without the input of the Law Society. Mm-hmm. So we want to ensure that we, as the Law Society, we are driving the legislative and policy agenda of the government in terms of where we want to see this country. We believe that if we are able to do that, then we will make the Law Society extremely influential in terms of determining policy, taxation, and where this country is going to go. And so you're going to see a lot of engagement from the Law Society on some of those things, and contemporary topics like climate change, which are things which we are looking at to ensure that as a country, because one thing that we know is that if the country develops economically, then the lawyers who are the engineers of commerce and trade will get to benefit. So we are looking at all that, and we will be working with the government, we'll be working with the civil society and the donor community to ensure that we are able to deliver on that mandate. All
right. Eric Theuri, thank you so much for your time and your input. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right, well done. Good luck. Happy holidays, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Eric Theuri there, the president of the Law Society of Kenya, breaking it down. I tell you, folks, justice, injustice, whatever you feel, thanks so much for your input, which is very valuable. And hopefully the LSK can do what it is supposed to do or what it wishes to do. And somebody has to be the checks and balances. And always watch out for Chapter 6 of the Constitution. Ethics. Ethics is a key part. Sure, the LSK will make sure that they stay on top of that. Thanks so much for being a part of JK Live. Every Wednesday, it's all about those three letters on the keyboard that follow each other. JKL. Keep tweeting at Koinange Jeff at Citizen TV Kenya. The hashtag is JK Live. Good night. Good luck. God bless Kenya.